I never imagined that my sister's wedding would change my life the way it did. It was supposed to be a perfect day, surrounded by beautiful vineyards. But then my husband grabbed my arm and whispered, "Haley, grab your bag. We're leaving right now. Act like nothing's wrong, okay?" At first, I didn't understand what he was saying. But the moment I looked into his eyes, I knew. This wasn't a joke. Something was terribly wrong. And 5 minutes later, I found myself calling the police on my own sister. When I received Autumn's wedding invitation and saw the venue address, I was a little surprised. A secluded valley, far inland from the California coastline. They had completely rented out a private winery for the entire weekend. Sitting next to Logan as he drove, my heart felt heavy as lead. "Haley, you've been sighing nonstop. Do you really not want to go that much?" His gentle voice eased some of the tension I'd been holding inside. I could never hide how I truly felt from him. It would be terrible to say I don't want to go, right? It's my sister's wedding, but I know exactly how it'll be. I'll end up being Autumn's supporting cast again. The perfect bride and her dull, forgettable older sister. That's the picture our parents want to see. A bitter smile slipped out without me meaning to. Logan said nothing. He just listened quietly to my words. That silence gave me the courage to continue. If I don't go, I'll be called the cold sister for the rest of my life. If I do go, I'll just wear myself down emotionally. Either way, there's no place for me to feel at peace. At that moment, Logan silently reached out and gently held my hand. "You're not a supporting character. To me, you've always been the main one. And deep down, you know that, don't you?" He spoke calmly, his eyes still on the road. "No matter what your parents say, I know how sincere, thoughtful, and kind you are. If they can't see your worth, that's their problem, not yours. Absolutely not yours." His words always soothed the frayed edges of my heart. Before I met him, I was constantly swayed by my family's opinions. I kept blaming myself for not becoming the good daughter they expected. My sense of worth always depended on how others evaluated me. But Logan was different. He accepted all of me, just as I was. Even when I couldn't believe in myself, he believed in me more than anyone else in the world. I gently squeezed his hand in return. With him by my side, I would be okay. No matter what happens. I took a deep breath and silently prepared myself to face the obligation ahead and the inevitable emotional storm that would come with it. The car exited the highway and entered the final winding mountain road leading to the winery. Little did I know the nightmare that awaited us beyond that point. As we cleared the mountain path, a massive iron gate stood before us, like something out of a medieval castle. This place is incredible. It looks like a fortress. That's so like Autumn. Her life has always required the grandest stage possible. As the gate slowly opened, it revealed an entirely different world. Vineyards stretched endlessly across the hillsides, and at the top stood a modern and majestic structure made of stone and glass, glittering under the sunlight. The parking lot was lined with luxury cars I couldn't even name. The moment we stepped into the venue, we were surrounded by the sweet scent of flowers and the elegant sound of a live string quartet. The ceiling soared high above us, and enormous windows offered a panoramic view of the vineyards. Well-dressed guests chatted with crystal glasses in hand. Each of them radiated an air of wealth and success. Then, pushing her way through the crowd, my mother rushed over to us. "Haley, Logan, I'm so glad you made it. You must be exhausted from the long trip." But before the warmth of her welcome could settle, her eyes scanned my outfit from head to toe, appraising every detail. I had chosen a tasteful, simple navy dress, but clearly it didn't meet her expectations. "Oh, Haley, still so modest in your tastes. Today is your sister's most radiant day. You really could have dressed a bit more festively. Look over there, that woman is the wife of a famous cardiac surgeon. Isn't her dress just stunning?" "This is fine for me, Mom." It was all I could manage to say. Standing beside her, my father gave me a perfunctory hug, then quickly turned to Logan. Logan, I've heard about your company. They say it's highly regarded in the field of environmental analytics. I'd love to introduce you to one of my golf buddies sometime. But he never got the chance to finish that sentence. My father's eyes had caught sight of a major Hollywood producer passing behind us. Oh, excuse me. I have to say hello. That's Mr. Coleman. Apparently, Autumn's fiancé is planning to invest in his next project. With those parting words, both my mother and father turned their backs on us as if perfectly coordinated, drawn toward the more important guests. It was a familiar sight. To them, we were either accessories to show off or stepping stones to move past. And then it happened. The buzz of the room suddenly quieted, and every guest's eyes turned toward the entrance. There stood my sister, Autumn, dressed in pure white. Her gown, embroidered with hundreds of Swarovski crystals, sparkled dazzlingly under the lights, and her long veil flowed behind her like a cloud. Beside her stood her fiancé, Travis, wearing a flawless tuxedo and flashing a perfect smile. They walked forward like movie stars, bathed in the admiration of the guests. When Autumn spotted me in the crowd, she widened her eyes theatrically and rushed over, calling my name. "Haley, you came." She pulled me into a firm hug. A luxurious perfume rose from her embrace. And then, in a voice only I could hear, she whispered into my ear. "Thanks for coming all this way. If you hadn't shown up, it would have looked bad for me." Her words pricked my heart. To her, I was just a prop to save face. But I could only force a smile and respond. "Congratulations, Autumn. You look beautiful. Right?" Travis picked out something that suits me perfectly. She said this while leaning affectionately against Travis, who stood beside her. Then she pointed to the small gift bags placed on our table and smiled meaningfully. "I prepared a special present for everyone. You're going to love it. Just a little spice to make a perfect day even more perfect." As she smiled, Travis reached out his hand toward Logan. "You must be Haley's husband, Logan Parker. I've heard about you. You're a chemist, right?" His handshake was firm, and his smile looked like it belonged on the cover of a magazine. But the moment Logan replied, "My specialty is environmental analytical chemistry," I thought I saw Travis's eyes flash with a cold, icy glint behind that perfect smile. His expression stiffened, ever so slightly. But Travis quickly returned to his usual grin and raised his wineglass proudly. "Isn't this winery amazing? Most of all, the privacy and security are impeccable. Exactly what we need for our big day. Not even an ant could sneak in if they weren't invited." He stared intently at Logan, as if testing him. When Autumn said, "Travis, the Hendersons are waiting." The two of them immediately turned away and walked off toward the next important guests. As if a storm had just passed through, Logan and I were left standing alone in the vast venue. A waiter appeared out of nowhere and handed us each a glass of champagne. Logan stared at the two retreating figures and murmured softly, "Something feels off." His uneasy comment lingered in my ears, but I figured it was just his occupational habit of analyzing everything, so I didn't think much of it. With a champagne glass in hand, I stood a little distance away, watching the scene unfold. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. It looked like something straight out of a Hollywood movie set. Typical Autumn, I suppose. But do we really need all of this? How much did it cost just to maintain this illusion of grandeur and vanity? Everything started to look fake to me. As expected, my parents were completely taken with Autumn. She was the only one they had eyes for, always had been. I was just another nameless extra painted into this lavish backdrop. That's when I noticed Logan furrowing his brow. "What is it?" He was quietly sniffing the air, as if trying to confirm something. He's an environmental analytical chemist, and his sense of smell is far sharper than most people's. When his eyes turned toward the table near the reception exit, where the wedding favors for all the guests were neatly arranged, I saw his face drained of color. He turned back to me and whispered in my ear, making sure no one else could hear, Haley, grab your bag. We're leaving now. Act like nothing's wrong, okay? His voice was low and controlled, but there was an unmistakable urgency in his tone. All I could do was nod. We quietly slipped out of the venue, careful not to draw any attention. We moved through the smiling, congratulating guests like something out of a spy movie. Logan opened the passenger door for me and we got into the car. Until he locked the doors with a cold click before starting the engine, a part of me still hoped this was all some kind of mistake. Logan, what on earth is going on? Please explain. My heart feels like it's about to burst. He kept his hands tightly on the wheel, staring straight ahead at the vineyards. Haley, it's the wedding favors. I smelled something coming from those little gift bags. A smell? Like sweet candy or something? He slowly shook his head. His eyes were more serious than I'd ever seen. No, more like a chemical scent. This might get technical, but listen. My job is to identify trace amounts of pollutants that have leaked into the environment. That means I'm extremely sensitive to volatile organic solvents most people would never notice. I caught my breath. The pieces of what he was trying to say began to come together slowly and in a terrifying way. There was a faint, really faint acetone-like smell coming from the gift bags. But that wasn't all. Underneath that, I caught the scent of a specific alkaloid compound that only appears during certain synthetic processes. It's a telltale residual odor associated with the production of controlled substances. Wait, are you saying? He finally turned to face me. In his eyes was a mix of pity and chilling certainty. Yeah, Autumn is hiding illegal drugs in those so-called wedding gifts. And she's planning to have every unsuspecting guest carry them out as part of the party favors. Logan's words stabbed into my chest like a blade of ice. My mind went blank, and I couldn't think clearly. Drugs? Smuggling? It felt like I was listening to the plot of a bad suspense movie. No, no way. This has to be a mistake. Autumn is just a little naive and flashy, that's all. There's no way she'd ever be involved in something like this. My voice was noticeably shaky, even to myself. I was desperately trying to deny what he had said. I didn't want to believe it. That my one and only sister could be planning something so horrifying. Haley, listen to me. This isn't something an amateur would come up with. Choosing this remote winery, using an extravagant wedding to distract everyone, it's all too calculated. Her fiancé, he's in on it too. This is organized crime. He paused for a breath and then delivered the harsh truth. That's why we have to stop it. We need to call the police. Right now. The police? But calling the police? She's my family. What if you're wrong? It would ruin Autumn's life, her wedding. A wave of guilt crashed over me like black water. Even if Logan was right, could I really turn my sister in? With my own hands? I saw flashes of our parents' faces, how they'd always doted on Autumn and ignored me. And still, she was my sister. The only one I shared blood with. At that moment, Logan gently wrapped his large hands around my trembling ones. He looked me straight in the eyes and spoke quietly, yet clearly. They deceived you too, Haley. You and I, we were about to be used in their crime without even knowing it. To them, we were nothing more than a convenient cover. His words hit me like a jolt. They don't see you as family. If it meant protecting themselves, they'd throw you away without hesitation. Even knowing that, are you still going to protect them? That one question shattered the last of my hesitation. I felt tears run down my cheeks. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were all the quiet grief and resignation I had buried deep inside for years, finally rising to the surface. He was right. To them, I had always been the decorative older sister, the one who was just convenient to have around. I nodded slowly and took my phone out of my handbag. My fingers were still trembling, but my heart felt strangely calm. Okay, I understand. You want me to call 911, right? My voice as I gave the operator our location and explained the situation didn't even sound like my own. They're trying to distribute drugs at my sister's wedding." The moment I spoke those words, I knew there was no going back. Following the police's instructions, we waited by the roadside just outside the entrance to the winery. The screen of my phone glowed coldly, showing the record of the call I had just made to 911. After I gave the location and situation to the operator, Logan took the phone and calmly, but urgently, offered additional details from his professional perspective. "This is Logan Parker, an environmental analytical chemist. Yes, I'm on site. From the gift bags, I detected a volatile organic solvent similar to acetone, as well as the distinctive residual odor of alkaloid compounds associated with the synthesis of controlled substances. This isn't just a case of possession. There's a possibility of a large-scale distribution scheme that uses over 200 unsuspecting guests as couriers. It appears highly organized and extremely urgent." I wondered how convincingly his precise explanation had been received. "Logan, are you sure this was the right thing to do?" I asked in a faint voice, staring at my hands clasped together on my lap. The resolve I thought I had solidified was beginning to shake again during this suffocating wait for the police to arrive. "Yeah, you did the right thing. It couldn't have been an easy decision. You're strong, Haley. But what if you were wrong? What if that smell was something else, like some kind of special fragrance? Then I've done something unforgivable." From the venue, I could still hear faint music and the joyful voices of the guests. I was about to turn that beautiful scene into a nightmare with a single phone call. That truth weighed heavily on me. Trust my nose, that wasn't any kind of fragrance. I'm staking all of my expertise and experience on this. I'm certain of what I smelled. It was a dangerous sign. You protected a lot of people today, even if one of them was your sister. As he said this, he gently wrapped his arm around my shoulder. In his embrace, I trembled slightly, gazing out through the windshield at the glittering paradise that was slowly becoming a living hell. It was maybe 30 minutes later. Just when I started to fear, deep down, that our report had been forgotten. The worst possibility quietly beginning to bloom in my heart. Breaking the silence, several police cars and a larger black SUV rolled silently, but with overwhelming authority onto the private road leading to the winery. Their swift and discreet movement made it clear this was no routine patrol. It was a specialized unit that had taken our report very seriously. We watched the entire scene unfold. The music stopped, and the cheerful chatter of the guests shifted into murmurs of confusion. In an instant, the place of celebration had transformed into the scene of an investigation. Amid the puzzled stares of the guests, a plainclothes senior detective, flanked by several officers, walked directly toward Autumn and Travis. His voice was calm but left no room for refusal. "We've received a highly credible report that these gift bags contain controlled substances. We'll need your cooperation." Travis, still wearing his flawless smile, shrugged. "Detective, you must be mistaken. These are just tokens of appreciation for our guests. Please feel free to inspect whatever you like." He confidently handed one of the wedding favors from the nearest table to the detective. Autumn also kept her composed smile. But it didn't last long. The detective took the bag, pulled out a small sachet from inside, and handed it to the officer beside him. The officer retrieved a small plastic pouch from his coat. It was a narcotics field test kit. He opened the sachet and sprinkled a tiny amount of the powder into the kit. Everyone nearby held their breath, eyes locked on that small pouch. The clear liquid inside the pouch turned, in the next moment, a deep and unmistakably guilty shade of blue, as if a drop of ink had been spilled into it. The moment that color appeared, Travis's flawless smile crumbled from his face. And Autumn turned deathly pale with fear. The detective held up the pouch for them to see, and in a calm but commanding voice that echoed through the venue, he gave the order to his team. "Positive. Take both of them into custody caught in the act. Every gift bag here is now vital evidence. Seize them all. Guests, we ask for your cooperation." At his signal, the other officers sprang into action. They began explaining the situation to the guests, collecting the wedding favors from every table. The place of celebration had been transformed instantly into the scene of a major criminal investigation. Everyone stood in shock, struggling to grasp what was happening. One woman collapsed in tears. A man began shouting in outrage. Lavish floral arches stood side by side with bright yellow police tape. The surreal contrast could only be described as a nightmare. Soon we saw cold handcuffs fastened around Autumn and Travis's wrists. As they were being escorted toward the patrol cars, Autumn noticed us. Her face twisted into something monstrous as she glared at us and shouted something. We couldn't hear her words. But I understood perfectly from the movement of her lips. You did this. Our parents just stood there, motionless. My mother, still in a daze, followed her gaze until she noticed our car parked down the road. In that instant, the sorrow in her face ignited into a burning fury. Ignoring my father's attempt to stop her, my mother rushed toward our car, not caring that the hem of her dress was dragging and disheveled. "Haley, don't open the door," Logan said calmly. But there was no need. I couldn't move at all. I was frozen in fear. My mother slammed her fists against the passenger window over and over as if she were trying to shatter it. The expression on her face was one I had never seen before. "Open this door, Haley. Get out here." Just a pane of glass separated me from her hate-filled face, now only inches away. Behind her, my father stared at me with eyes full of cold contempt and disappointment. "How could you do this? You destroyed your own sister, your own family with your own hands. All we ever wanted was for Autumn to be happy." "Mom, that's not it. Please listen. This was a crime. So many people could have been hurt." But my faint voice was drowned out by her furious scream. "Shut up. What do you know? You've always been this way? You've always envied Autumn's happiness. Because your life is a failure, you had to drag your shining sister down with you to feel better? Don't ever show your face to us again. You're no longer my daughter. You're no longer my daughter." That final, devastating sentence froze my heart completely. Just then, one of the police officers who had noticed the commotion ran over and gently but firmly pulled my mother away. Without saying a word, we drove off in silence. In the rearview mirror, the image of my parents staring at us with nothing but hatred grew smaller and smaller. That was the last image I ever saw of my parents with my own eyes. Afterward, we were taken to the police station for questioning. A tired-looking senior detective placed a plastic cup of coffee in front of me and said, with sympathetic eyes, "Haley, this must have been a painful decision for you." I simply nodded in silence. I felt like if I tried to speak, everything would fall apart. It was because she's my sister that someone had to stop her. I remember my voice shaking more than I expected as I said those words. Since that day, my world has completely changed. Autumn and Travis were indicted on serious charges of drug smuggling and distribution. Despite how perfect their plan had seemed, not even the renowned lawyers they hired with their wealth could overturn it, and both were sentenced to long prison terms. As soon as we returned home, our lives were, predictably, swept up in a media frenzy. Dubbed a winery wedding scandal, the incident was covered daily on the news and, at first, treated like amusing gossip. However, as the full scope of the case came to light, public opinion began to shift dramatically. Comment sections online and TV news features were soon filled with praise for my actions, calling me the brave sister who protected over 200 guests from a dangerous crime. At the same time, harsh criticism began to fall squarely on my parents. How could they not have noticed their daughter's reckless spending habits? Rather than stopping her crime, they celebrated it with a lavish wedding. This is a complete failure of parental responsibility. Such harsh words were directed at them. Unable to endure the storm of public condemnation, my parents shut themselves away in their home. I later heard from others that reporters had camped outside my parents' house, that neighbors stared at them with cold eyes, and that they were literally unable to take even a single step outside. Since that day, I haven't spoken a single word to them. I have no way of knowing what they're feeling now as they hide away in that house. No matter how many people praised me as brave, my heart never fully cleared. The fact that I had buried, with my own hands, the thing that once defined most of my life, my family, remained in my heart, like a heavy cross I would always carry. In the months following the incident, I began attending therapy to deal with the overwhelming sense of loss, with Logan supporting me through it all. Without him, I surely would have broken. On nights when I was tormented by nightmares, he simply rubbed my back in silence. On days when I cried for no reason, he just stayed beside me and watched the world outside the window with me. He never once told me to move on. Instead, he told me again and again, "You should be proud of your decision." The other day, he and I planted a small herb garden in our backyard. As we worked the soil and watered the new life, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. Bit